welcome back to our channel. Kat moved with quiet determination through the dim room, her fingers brushing the edges of the files she carried like they were both shield and weapon. Her heart pounded in her chest, not out of fear, but out of righteous anger. Every step she took felt heavier, burdened by the gravity of what she was about to do. She paused for a moment in the threshold, gathering the courage to lay everything bare in front of Izaiah. She knew once she revealed the truth, there would be no going back. In the silence, she set the stack of documents, photos, and recorded messages on the sleek tabletop. They lay there between her and Izaiah, each piece a fragment of a connection she had painstakingly reconstructed. But these were not mere fragments, they were proof of a betrayal so profound it threatened to shatter the foundation of his world. Kat watched as Izaiah's gaze followed her every movement, confusion mingling with dawning suspicion. She felt the heat of his questions, even though none were voiced. The evidence was damning. Financial records that revealed secret transactions, encrypted messages showing Eva negotiating behind his back, photographs of her meeting shadowy figures in the dead of night. There were voice recordings, too. Eva's voice, smooth and controlled, confessing her manipulation of Izaiah's allies, quietly leveraging his family's prestige to line her own pockets. Kat had collected every scrap, every whisper, every lie, until she held in her hands not just proof, but a reckoning. Izaiah leaned forward, his posture rigid. As his eyes drifted over each piece of paper, his expression tightened, as though a physical force was pressing on his chest. He had trusted Eva. He had believed in her. He had loved her. Now, with each photo and recording, the pillars of his trust wavered. He could scarcely reconcile the woman he adored with the shadowy figure revealed before him, a woman willing to commodify his heritage, to exploit his loyalty, to use his name as currency. Inside Kat, a storm raged. She had not expected this to hurt so much. With every second, her sense of vindication warred with guilt. She had always believed she was doing the right thing. But now, seeing the pain flicker across Izaiah's face, she wondered, had she gone too far? Was justice worth the cost of his heartbreak? Her arms trembled slightly, though she did not relent. She could not allow fear or remorse to stop her now. Izaiah's breath came in shallow, uneven pulls. His mind raced. The world he had built in his mind, the world he believed Eva shared with him, was collapsing, piece by piece. He recognized in those documents her ambition, her disregard for boundaries, and a cold, calculating willingness to sacrifice his trust for personal gain. The notion that she might love him purely now felt like a cruel joke. Every violation felt intimate, a personal assault not just on his wealth or legacy, but on his identity. Eva, realizing what was happening, recoiled. Her heart thudded with panic, but also with a fierce defensiveness. She had known the risk, she had always known. Yet, she had convinced herself that the ends justified the means. She had spun lies as carefully as a spider spins a web, convincing herself that she was protecting their future, that her actions were necessary sacrifices. But now, faced with her whole scheme laid bare, she felt exposed, vulnerable in a way she never had before. The power she once wielded threatened to slip away. She realized, with cold clarity, that Kat had not only discovered her betrayal, she had exposed it for all to see. Izaiah remained frozen, as though trapped in some terrible waking nightmare. The anger inside him was a living thing, coiling and twisting. He did not move, did not speak. His loyalty, once unquestioning, had been weaponized. His love, once freely offered, had been manipulated like a bargaining chip. And in this moment, he felt hollow, as though he were standing in the ruins of a life that no longer bore his name. Kat stepped back, giving Izaiah space to absorb the blow. She felt her own chest tighten, uncertainty flickering at the edges of her resolve. She had predicted shock. She had prepared for denial. But she hadn't counted on how deep the betrayal would cut, or how devastating his heartbreak would be. Eva's face was pale, her composure cracking under the weight of exposure. She had imagined confrontation, but not this raw, this unmasked. She had hoarded every lie, rationalized every selfish act, convinced herself she would never be found out. Yet here she stood, stripped of illusions, trembling in the presence of the very man she had deceived and the ally she had underestimated. Izaiah's eyes, dark and stormy, flicked between Kat and Eva. Their relationship, once a triangle built on love and trust, had become a battlefield. He realized the depth of Kat's pain, her fierce loyalty, not just to the truth, but to him. Yet at the same time, he felt an ache for Eva, for what they had shared, for the version of her he believed in. But could he ever trust that version again? The room seemed to shrink around them. The air was thick with regret, betrayal, and wounded pride. Kat's action had forced a reckoning, not just of Eva's choices, but of Izaiah's own complacency. In his shocked silence, he confronted the truth that he had favored ignorance over suspicion, love over accountability. For Eva, the stakes were unbearable. The fortress of her carefully constructed deceit was collapsing. She had gambled everything. Her influence, her standing, her future. She realized now that even if she could justify her betrayal, she might never reclaim his trust. Gone was the luxury of secrets. She had been exposed, naked in her ambition. Kat, though shaken, felt a fierce clarity settling in her bones. She had done what she needed to do. The evidence lay between them like an indictment, and she understood now that her role was more than avenger, she was guardian of a truth that mattered more than comfort or courtesy. She had lifted the curtain, and now there was no going back. Izaiah, still reeling, tasted a bitter resolve. He knew he faced a terrible choice. He could forgive Eva, partly, for the woman he once loved, for the history they shared. But to forgive, he would need to rebuild on a foundation stronger than words or promises. Alternatively, he could sever ties, demand accountability, force consequences. And he had to decide soon, because the evidence in front of him spoke louder than any plea. Inside him, a war raged, the part of him that still dreamed of their future, and the part that saw betrayal in every interaction. The man who believed in Eva's love now questioned whether that love was ever real, or just another transaction. Kat, seeing his internal struggle, understood the magnitude of what she had done. She had torn open a wound, but she also offered a path. If he chose courage over comfort, he could confront Eva together, demand transparency, and reclaim his power. But if he recoiled, the damage would be irreversible. Eva, reeling from exposure, felt the walls closing in. She realized that to save herself, she would have to face more than Izaiah's anger, she would have to confront the moral cost of her own ambition. The person she had become, in her ruthless quest for success, might not be the person he once fell in love with. As the tension pulsed in the air, Izaiah's mind made its decision, not in words, but in the silence that followed. He would not be a victim forever. He would not be manipulated again. The betrayal weighed on him, heavy and personal, but within that weight, he felt a clear, quiet resolve. He would rebuild, on his own terms, or he would let the truth destroy everything. Either choice would reshape their lives irrevocably. Kat watched him, her chest tight, her eyes blazing with a strange mixture of pride and sorrow. She had stirred a storm, yes, but she believed the storm was needed. In that moment, she didn't see betrayal. She saw justice. Eva remained still, her ambition laid bare, torn between fear of loss and the cold logic that had guided her decisions. She understood that to salvage anything, she would need more than apologies, she would have to prove that beneath all the calculation lay something true. But she also knew that her greatest gamble now was not money or influence, but humility and accountability. As the first tremors of this reckoning settled, the room seemed to contract with possibility and peril. The calm after the reveal was fragile. It could shatter into rage, or it could shift into something more dangerous, a new order built on exposed truths. And in that silence, each of them knew, their lives had been forever changed. Trust had fractured. Loyalties had been tested. The future was uncertain. But nothing, neither love, nor ambition, nor betrayal, would ever be the same again. Kat had torn down a facade. Izaiah had seen the raw core of betrayal. And Eva now faced a choice that might cost her everything she had built. What came next would define them all.